Good evening, Texas bikers and bikers all across the nation. This is Texas Biker Radio, number 378. My name is Mel Popeye Moss. My co-host, Mel O.G. Robbins. We are with Sons of Liberty Riders MC, and we welcome you here. And in particular, the citizens of Milam County and let's include the citizens of Texas. And how are you doing this evening, Mel?
I'm just fabulous.
Yeah, good. What we're going to do go ahead.
As my niece always says, another day in paradise.
There you go. Well, Mel, what we're going to do in our allotted time tonight, we're going to try and bring the citizens of Milam County in Texas up to date on what's going on in Milam County with the 24-year combat veteran, Patrick, and his trial for criminal carry. Even though he's never been convicted, I don't until now even charged with a crime, a felony. And of course, maybe we ought to try and just explain from where we got involved from the beginning. And I'm not necessarily talking about Patrick and the trial that's going on in Milam County. We'll get to that. But Mel, let's start where we got involved with one of the largest, I think the largest case of motorcycle profiling in Texas history was Twin Peaks, where they...
Yeah, I was going to say it all starts with profiling.
Yes.
And, what the public in general needs to understand is this profiling is a multifaceted, many-fingered thing. You can attach any pronoun to it, and it'll eventually apply to you.
Yes.
That's the deal. And then it leads into the horrors of this database that our governor loves to keep.
Right. And Mel...
That I might add, as you mentioned the other day, it's typed right across this document, not to be used in a court of law.
Yes.
So, but I digress here.
Yeah. And we'll explain why that is so, why it shouldn't be used in a court of law. We'll get to that here in a few moments. But I want to talk about Twin Peaks, where they attempted to and were ready to send innocent people to jail that had nothing to do with what went on with the debacle that happened there, instigated by the Waco PD and the DPS. And so, they were willing to send innocent people to jail. And Mel, that's where we got involved when we heard the DPS. And I guess the biggest thing to come out of that is law enforcement does not always tell the truth. They want to set a narrative and sell that narrative to the media and the public. And they've been quite good at it. And for years, decades, our community, the motorcycling community, has let them get away with it without saying a word until now. Now everybody's ready to stand up and say enough. And we want everybody to remember, and that we want to tell the public right now that that was a 4-year debacle. They put all these bikers through all kinds of hell with $1 million bonds. The uncertainty of it all. We can't explain how hard that was on the families, on their personal finances. But Mel, we also discovered during that time, because we've been at this now for over almost 5 years now. Since then, going on 4.5, I guess. What we discovered in Waco was the collusion that existed between law enforcement, between the DA's office, between the court system itself. It was absolutely incredible and mind-boggling.
Well, and from that, let's take a couple steps back and talk about the fact that not everyone that got scooped up into that, I mean, I would say everyone there probably rode a motorcycle, either on the front or the back, because that was a meeting, a political meeting to discuss legislation that had been passed and legislation that was being worked on relative to motorcycle riders and the motorcycle community in general, your rights relative to laws that are being passed, things like that. I think people seem to automatically think that, well, anyone that was involved in Waco belonged to a motorcycle club. And that's not true at all. There were, of the 177 people that were scooped up and arrested, not everyone in there belonged to any kind of a motorcycle club.
Yes,
there were lots of independent people there.
That's true.
And there were people that were in what we term a mom and pop club or a riding association. A riding association could be something like a hog chapter, a Harley owners group. You got people from ABATE. That's a statewide organization that a lot of bikers belong to, that also watches out for motorcycle rights.
Yes.
And, monitors political active legislation that, political activists are trying to get passed that we may or may not like. So, a lot of people were involved in that had nothing to do with what law enforcement would like you to think it was all about.
Right.
And that, I want you to remember that as we start to talk more about Milam County, because what's going on there now has some similarities to what the hell went on in Waco, because they're trying to term everybody that rides a motorcycle as bad, and they're trying to set this image in everyone's mind of what a motorcycle rider is, and that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Mel, after they, I want to remind our viewers that after all was said and done, they had one trial, 0 convictions, and eventually it ended up where law enforcement basically hung the DA out to dry, and they all of a sudden had amnesia, and they ran from it. ran from it because it had turned into a political circus that ended up with the DA being tossed out of office. And the DA should have been tossed out of office. And it's in my opinion, Mel, any DA, any judge, any of those should be as concerned about the innocent as they are about trying to convict somebody and send them to prison for many, many years who participated in no crimes. I mean, it's as simple as that. But Mel, let's move on to the gang databases themselves. Now, gang databases have been around for a while, but Governor Abbott has taken them to the extremes. And matter of fact is he's wanting more and more and more in various cities around the state. And so here we go, Mel. All these databases, and he's telling the law enforcement, hey, get out there, get people into my database, anybody that even looks like a gang member. And so the pressure is on law enforcement to go out there and, in the case of motorcyclists, to profile. And right now the profiling has gone beyond the scope. It's gone beyond 1% clubs. And you can read about 1% clubs here in TexasBikerRadio.org. We explain the history of it. But they're out there stopping people, and Mel, it's gone beyond the scope. It's gone beyond 1% clubs. And even...
Well, let's talk about how they put this together.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they supposedly go to some document that's put out by the FBI.
And the DPS.
That has been cut and paste for years.
Yeah.
Where you think, you know, okay, anybody that's in a criminal database or a crime database is some kind of a convicted criminal. And that's not true. What they do is they name certain organizations, certain clubs, and hey, let's not kid one another. There are some hardcore organizations in there that they talk about, like the MS-13 and the Aryan Brotherhood, stuff like that we know are hardcore. But what happens is it starts to grow roots, and it starts to encompass people that may not even be involved in any criminal organization.
Exactly.
Perfect example. We were in the bank here a couple months back setting up an account for our Houston chapter. And this banker, this very charming little gal, was telling us, you know, we were talking all about biking and activities and stuff like that. And somewhere or other, this the subject of profiling came up, and she relayed to us a story, a horror tale of a friend of hers that lives in California. Now, this friend of hers was sitting in a restaurant having lunch with a guy she had dated a couple times. Now, unbeknownst to her, this guy apparently had some kind of a criminal record. The police walked in, spotted him, came over and started talking to him, shook him down. I understand he was a felon. He was in possession of a firearm. And because she was there having lunch with him, she ended up with her name in the crime database, in the criminal database. Now, this gal had never done anything to anyone. The only thing she was guilty of was having dated this guy a couple times, and that was it. And all she knew was what the guy had told her, and bingo, there you go.
Yeah.
So, we know there are a multitude of people that are in that gang database, as they like to call it, the gang database, that don't even belong there. And you could be in there because you went to something somewhere, a motorcycle rally. You were seen, you parked your car near a booth from somebody that they thought was a criminal organization, and because you parked your car near there and maybe you stopped at that booth or you went to some activity to have a couple of drinks to support someone because they were trying to gather funds for somebody that had an operation or whatever, and because you were there, you are termed a known associate, and now your name is in that database.
Mel, right here, we might mention to our audience that there are no guilt by association laws. Read your Constitution. We have freedom of assembly, whether it be with a group or with a few friends or even a person. I mean, man,
Now, where it really gets sticky is if you, a citizen in Milam County, happen to have your name in that crime database, and I'm willing to bet you hardly anyone ever checks to see if their name is in any database. Let's say you have a concealed carry permit. Now, the state doesn't check the gang database because any document that's printed out from there already has typed out on the top of it, not to be used in a court of law.
Yeah.
So how legal does that tell you that document is to begin with? It isn't.
Yeah.
Because they can't even discuss with you how names end up in there because it's purely a discretionary thing on the part of individuals that seem to have access to submit names into that. And we don't even know who all that is. We don't know that it's just law enforcement officers because they're not willing to talk about it. So you have a permit issued to you that says you can carry a concealed weapon, but some officer decides he's going to run your name in the gang database to see if your name's in there. And sure enough, bingo, there it is. So that officer on the spot revokes your carry permit, and in revoking your carry permit, now arrests you and confiscates your weapon for illegal carry. There you go. Therein lies the paradox. What the hell is going on here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now let's, each year, the DPS, I want to explain this to our audience. Each year, the DPS puts out a Texas gang threat assessment. We're due for one this year. Last year, it was November, around November of 2018, the last one that was put out. Now, it's mostly years of cut and paste. It's full of rankings. They rank the threat and opinions with, and in that assessment, they offer very little evidence that backs up those opinions. especially when it comes to motorcycle clubs. Now, for example, the crimes listed for the bandidos, the terrible bandidos, that's the number one that they like to throw out there. Here's what they say. They ride in a pack. They wear insignias. They participate in charity events. And they are low-key. I mean, Mel, where's the crime there? Now, there are crimes with individuals, but they're far and few between. And it's not the club. That's the reason they say they're low key, because there's really not that much evidence out there. There's no there. And Mel, you want to talk about maybe the only club that's ever been convicted as a criminal organization, and it is not any of them in Texas.
Well, that's even hinky as hell.
Yeah.
The feds for years have been trying to take the Mongols' patch away. They want to confiscate it. They want to declare it illegal to wear. So there we have the fashion police. Could decide that you shouldn't be wearing this or you shouldn't be wearing that because it signifies this, that, or the other. They have attempted for years to say that the patch that the Mongols wear on their back is the symbol of a criminal organization. So they have an unsuccessful, it's clearly unconstitutional to do something like that, because you should be able to wear what you want. So their next tactic was to bring forth individuals who had been individually charged in the Mongols for committing crimes in the past. We're talking years ago. They brought all that subject matter together before a jury and convinced a jury to believe that because some of these individuals within the Mongols that committed crimes years ago were convicted of crimes, that the organization itself was criminal. And for whatever reason, they were able to get that on with the jury. So the Mongol organization has now been convicted as a criminal organization because of the actions of some individuals, not everyone within the organization. And I might add, there are more law enforcement officers convicted in any given year from any given police department than there are in total bikers throughout the United States.
That's correct.
So would that not make some of or all of these law enforcement organizations criminal organizations by their definition? At any rate, they are still not able to take the patch away from the Mongols because they're still jumping up and down saying, well, that patch represents a criminal organization. And the judge is saying you can't do that. They have a constitutional right to wear that patch. But nonetheless, the Mongols are now, their organization is considered a criminal organization. So, I think we probably ought to start taking police departments in front of juries and convince them that this department is a criminal organization because you've had several officers within that organization that have been convicted of a felony.
Mel,
committing crimes.
And it's like the recent study by Bowling Green University, who did a study on this. The police officers and police departments and everything else, they've been involved in crimes across the nation. The real numbers of officers involved in crimes are not known. because of their
Oh, yeah.
ability, to cover it up, and because the courts give them great leeway. They actually help out in that cover, and it's an incredible thing that we see going on. And so, you know, understand what's happening here, and the reason the Mongols, a lawyer was able to convince a jury that hey, they're all guilty of association. Even though there's no guilt by association laws, he did convince the jury of that. And so, but then things turned around in the upper courts, and they were able to keep their trademarks, their patches, and only the mother club was fined, as everybody thought it turned everybody in the organization into a criminal. That's to be seen what happens down the line, because as we know, motorcycle clubs are a reflection of our society when it comes to criminal activities. There are good and bad folks everywhere in our society. This includes law enforcement and every other organization out there. It's just, that's it. It's not that they're a criminal organization. It's that they're a reflection of the rest of our society. You look at it, and you look out there, and you see all the drugs, you see all the crime, you see all the murders, and you take a look at it deeply, and you find out it's not motorcycle clubs that are the problem. That's the truth. And you have to decide whether you can handle that or not, the truth, as it is. So, Mel, let's explain. In order for people to get into the governor's databases, we have mandated law enforcement profiling motorcyclists. They have great power and leeway on the side of the road. Matter of fact, it's too much power in our opinion.
Yeah, Protect and Serve went south some time ago.
Yeah.
And hasn't been seen since.
You know, Mel, at that point, they don't have any real evidence you've ever committed a crime tooling down the highway. He or she is profiling based on opinions of persons and entities who will benefit in some way. Like,
and
go ahead.
There's an unknown fact. Now, I can't remember if it's 2 years or 5 years. But Bill Smith, who's an attorney that works with the Texas Council of Clubs and Independents up here in Region 2, told us about this one. And he said, if your name is in the criminal gang database, even if you are an ex-felon who, maybe did whatever, there's a lot of things you can do that are considered felonies that would shock the hell out of you. But if you're a convicted felon, and for whatever reason your name's in that criminal gang database that the state has,
mm-hmm.
if you are not charged with anything within the past, and I can't remember if it's 2 or 5 years, you have a right to have your name removed from that database.
And I think he said 5, Mel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever term it is. Now, don't you find that interesting?
Yes. Yes.
And I mean, the whole concept of what they've put together in this, it is contradictory within itself when you start thinking about it and applying it to everyday rules and life in general. It just it doesn't make any sense. And the cherry on top of the whipped cream is the cannot be used in a court of law.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah. Hey, Mel, and let me explain to our audience what benefits law enforcement might get by keeping it going, by keeping the narrative, keep pushing the narrative, and keep profiling and doing all this stuff. It's the way they benefit. Like fusion centers. That's where they collect all the data. You got all these guys sitting around on their asses that are monitoring and answering phone calls about persons that are in the database, or to check and see if they're in the database. Now, more fusion centers that the governor's pushing for. Let me go a little bit further, Mel. What else do they get? Military-grade equipment. We've seen it up close and personal. Jobs for law enforcement officers.
Yep. They get to earmark taxpayer money and get grants from the federal government.
That's right.
It's all about the frickin' money.
Jobs,
That's
grants.
all it is.
Jobs, grants, money, all to justify their existence and the quest for more, because they will never say they have enough. Never. And Mel, in the end there, they need a boogeyman, real or made up, to continue the hype over a threat that's not there. Motorcycle clubs are not out there involved in mass shootings. Motorcycle clubs are not out there robbing convenience stores. Motorcycle clubs are not out there committing murder of innocent people. And Mel, the DPS is the worst when it comes to hype and false narratives.
As a matter of fact, at this time of year, there's a hell of a lot of motorcycle clubs out there that are raising money,
yes,
gathering food, clothing, and toys for the holidays. There is no bigger heart than that of a biker.
You know, Mel, the dreaded bandidos are out there raising money and collecting items, coats for kids. It's going on all across the nation. And law enforcement likes to claim that that's just cover.
Yeah, that's a cover up to make us look good.
Yeah, just to make them look good, get the community on their side. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's bullshit. Everything these bikers, all clubs, everything they do when it comes to charity work is from the heart. Every bit of it. Every bit of it. And there's no way they're going to go out there like we have right now. We have a performer here at the next Thanksgiving Cowboys game that is threatening to boycott it because of some LGBTQ whatever it is. No biker would ever do that. No biker would ever make the poor suffer. Or a charitable organization suffer. They wouldn't do that. They'd try their best to make it happen, to make as much money or get as much items as they can. Toys for tots. And I'll call the law enforcement out on that every time. I hope we haven't confused our audience. But let's get down to Patrick and what's going on with him and the things that we've talked about that he's now the victim of. Bandido Patrick is facing criminal carry charges. He's a 24-year disabled from his war wounds combat vet, U.S. Army. He's never been convicted of a crime. he did everything right. He got his CHL. He was vetted by the state as a non-criminal. This is a 24-year Army career man, Purple Heart recipient, 2 Bronze Stars, other meritorious awards. And now this? Come on.
Stopped by a DPS officer that should have been fired to begin with.
Yes. Now,
Officer Nipple Ring.
yeah. Who couldn't keep his hand off some young girls. He got in trouble. We're not sure how he got out of it. And he was moved to another area. Sounds like our school system, doesn't it, Mel?
Sure does.
Yeah. So, that goes back to the ability to protect your bad apples. But yet point a finger at somebody that's innocent. And like we pointed out earlier, he's now because he was in that gang database, the DPS officer arrested him. And now he faces these charges. Confiscated his CHL. And now he wants to face his accuser. His accuser is that gang database. Now, because the DPS will tell you that it's secret and they can't talk about it, and you can't bring a person into trial to explain how and why Patrick got put into that database. Oh, we know why. Because the Bandidos are listed in the Outlaw Motorcycle Gang Report. That's the club that rides in packs. Goes on charity runs. Wears their insignia or patch. Oh, yeah, that's that club. Mel, you and I have been doing this many years, and, I've never been offered a drug. I damn sure haven't ever been offered a sex slave like the DPS likes to throw out there, or human trafficking. I mean, how hard can it be to human traffic on your motorcycle? Because that's what motorcycle clubs is all about, motorcycles. I want to tell the audience, it's incredible what we have heard and seen over the last almost 5 years. And as we go to the next state legislature, this time with more evidence than ever about what's going on, because as the legislature makes these laws, they don't understand the ramifications it has on your constitutional rights. In this case with Patrick, being able to face his accuser, the person that put him into the gang database. And remember, the gang database is just opinions. There was no real, when I read it, and I've read it for many years now, there's no evidence of any crimes other than some stuff that individuals got convicted of. And like we said, those are far and few between. A lot less than what we see from law enforcement, who now have exposed themselves and their culture that exists to the point they now have these citizen review boards. And let me tell you, these review boards are deserved. And it was just the other day, not long ago, that the Fort Worth police chief was begging the public not to blame the entire police department for the actions of a few. Mel, why is that not any different for any American citizen, motorcycle club or not, to not be painted with a broad brush? I mean, what happened to the merits of the individual? And let me tell you, Patrick has plenty of merits. Plenty.
Well, both the feds and law enforcement don't like to apply the same rules to themselves as they apply
There you go.
to the public.
There you go.
Laws for them, laws for us.
Yeah. Exactly. And you know, Mel, not only does Judge Young in Milam County have the ability to stop this in its tracks and send a message that we don't tolerate this kind of stuff, that we don't tolerate violations of the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. And if the judge won't do it, the citizens can. It's called jury nullification. That's when a jury returns a verdict of not guilty, despite its belief that the defendant is guilty of the violation as charged. The jury, in effect, nullifies a law that it believes is either immoral or wrongly applied, and wrongly applied to the defendant whose fate they are charged with deciding. Everybody, these laws are wrong. Our president is going through this stuff right now. He's not allowed to face his accuser, this mystery man that got information from another party. This anonymous guy that everybody knows in D.C. but don't want to say they know. The president, per the Sixth Amendment, should be allowed to face his accuser. And so should Patrick.
Well, that's just another prime example of how they take something that was originally intended, this protection thing for a whistleblower, was never meant to really be for their identity. It was meant to protect them from being fired for blowing the whistle on an employer.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible, everybody. And, you know, you people of Milam County, you have the ability to make a difference here. You really do. You know, you've been sold over the years that motorcycle clubs, and in particular the Bandidos and others, are evil. That they're all guilty of crimes. Painting them with a broad brush. We're not saying they're Boy Scouts. But it's not as bad as the hype from the DPS, from the FBI, and others would tell you. Matter of fact is, if you dig deep enough, the FBI will tell you that any crimes these 1% clubs are involved in is basically they're not big players. Meaning these people, somebody sees a chance to make some money and they go out and do the deed. Well, law enforcement does the same thing. Other segments of our society does the same thing. The lure of the money causes corruption. Not only in our society, but in our law enforcement entities as well. And right now, we're seeing corruption play out at the highest levels of government. And you got to start clearing this up somewhere. Why not in Milam County, Mel? Why not? Think the governor needs a message. The DPS needs a message. All these entities that would send the innocent to prison. It's common sense is what it is. Common sense. May, you got anything to add to all that?
No, not really, other than, everyone out there pay attention to what's going on. As we find things out, we'll keep you posted.
Exactly.
But the day comes for that jury trial in Milam County. We're counting on the citizens of Milam County to be common sense and, get this thing nullified.
At TexasBikerRadio.org, we have up there in the menu bar, we have a drop down that says Welcome Milam County. And that's for anybody in Texas and across the nation. Go take a look. And the first article we have there is understanding what this is about. And read that. Also, welcome citizens of Milam County. We have some videos to go along with them. And just try and, as best you can, with an open mind. And just know that for 70 years, since 1947, that's more than 70 years now, the powers that be within law enforcement at every level has been painting bikers with a broad brush. In particular, 1% clubs. Not everybody's an evil person. And you've been sold a bill of goods. Know the true story about 1% clubs, where it all came from. It's all right there for you to read. And Mel, with that, I think we'll ask everybody to have a great evening and ride safe.
Good night.
Good night.